The night it happened,
What's
he didn't
wrong?
expect it to matter.
I can't believe this is happening.
He almost didn't answer the phone.
Kate.
His son was already asleep on the couch, one small hand clutching the sleeve of his jacket like he was afraid his father might disappear again. When the caller ID flashed his boss's name, he hesitated, thumb hovering, heart tired in a way sleep never fixed. If he ignored it, tomorrow would be awkward. If he answered, something told him his life wouldn't stay the same. He picked up anyway, and that single decision quietly pulled him toward a morning that would change everything. She was sitting alone at the bar when he arrived, the confident woman from the office barely recognizable. Her shoulders were slumped, mascara smudged, glass untouched for several minutes as if she'd forgotten it was there. She laughed when she saw him, too loud, too forced, and apologized 3 times before he even spoke. He didn't judge. He'd learned long ago that people carry invisible weights. He paid the bill before she noticed, helped her to the car, and drove carefully through empty streets while she stared out the window, talking in fragments about pressure, expectations, how lonely it felt to always be the strongest person in the room. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, like he did with his son when nightmares came. At her apartment, she thanked him, suddenly serious, eyes clearer for a moment. "You didn't have to do this," she said. He shrugged, smiling gently. "Someone once did it for me," he replied, though that someone was a memory he rarely spoke about. He made sure she got inside safely, then went home, unaware that this quiet kindness had planted a seed neither of them could yet see. The next morning, he was back to being the single dad everyone overlooked at work, the one who left on time for school pickups, who skipped happy hours, who worked twice as hard to prove he belonged. He expected embarrassment, maybe distance. Instead, when she called him into her office, her voice was steady but her eyes searched his face like she was seeing him for the first time. She didn't mention the night. She asked about his son. About how he managed everything alone. The question caught him off guard. No one ever asked that. He answered honestly, about exhaustion, about guilt, about love so fierce it scared him. She listened in silence, then asked quietly, "Why didn't you take advantage of me?" The room felt smaller. He swallowed. "Because you trusted me," he said. "And because my son is always watching, even when he's not there." Something shifted in her expression, respect, maybe relief. When he left her office, his heart was racing. He didn't know why, but he felt like the story of his life had just paused, waiting for the next page. By the end of that day, nothing looked different, yet everything felt changed. She watched him in meetings, noticed how others dismissed him, how his ideas were taken only when repeated by someone louder. He went home, helped with homework, made dinner, kissed a small forehead goodnight, and wondered why her question kept echoing in his mind. He didn't know that she was sitting alone in her office long after everyone left, thinking about the man who had seen her at her weakest and chosen decency over opportunity. She realized something that scared her more than the hangover ever could. She had built a life of success and power, but somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten how to be human. And the person who reminded her was the one she'd barely noticed before. The following weeks unfolded like a slow revelation. She started asking his opinion in meetings and actually waiting for his answer. When he needed flexibility for his son's school event, she approved it without hesitation. Whispers began, assumptions formed, but neither of them addressed it. One late afternoon, when the office was nearly empty, she asked him to stay back. He tensed, expecting criticism. Instead, she thanked him, not just for that night, but for the example he set every day. "You reminded me who I want to be," she said, voice soft. He felt something warm and unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Still, he kept his distance. His life had taught him to be careful with hope. As he left, she watched him go, realizing that respect, once earned honestly, is impossible to ignore. Months later, a promotion announcement stunned the office. His name was called. People clapped, some surprised, some not. She met his eyes across the room, no secret between them, just mutual understanding. That evening, as he tucked his son into bed, the boy asked, "Dad, are you happy?" He paused, then smiled wider than he had in years. "I think I am," he said. Somewhere else in the city, she stood by her window, sober, clear-headed, finally at peace with herself. All because one night, a tired single dad chose kindness when no one was watching, and the next morning, one simple question opened a door neither of them knew they'd been waiting to walk through. The morning after his promotion, he woke before the alarm, heart pounding like something important was about to be taken away. For a few seconds, he lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for reality to correct itself. But the silence of the apartment, the soft breathing of his son from the next room, and the quiet certainty in his chest told him it was real. Still, a question lingered: why now? Why him? And why did it feel like the real test hadn't even begun yet? At work, the air felt different. Conversations stopped when he passed. Some smiles were genuine, others polite and tight. He kept his head down, focusing on tasks, determined to earn every ounce of trust he'd been given. When she stepped into his office later that day, he stood instinctively, the old habit refusing to fade. She gestured for him to sit, studying him with that same thoughtful look she'd had the morning after the night she barely remembered. "I need you to lead this project," she said calmly. "Not because of anything that happened back then, but because you see people. And that's what this team needs." Her words settled into him slowly, like warmth after a long winter. For the first time in years, he felt seen not as a problem to manage, but as a person with value. Outside the office, life didn't magically become easier. His son struggled with school, acting out in small ways that broke his heart. One evening, after a rough parent-teacher meeting, he sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples, wondering if success at work was costing him where it mattered most. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide and honest. "Are you mad at me, Dad?" The question sliced through him. He pulled his son close and whispered, "Never. I'm just learning, same as you." In that moment, he realized strength wasn't about balance, it was about choosing love, again and again, even when you were tired. She noticed the exhaustion in his eyes the next day and surprised him by stopping by his office with coffee. No assistant. No authority. Just her. "You don't have to be perfect," she said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. He laughed softly. "I don't even know what perfect looks like anymore." She smiled, a real one this time. "Neither do I. But I know what honest looks like." That conversation changed the way they spoke to each other from then on. No masks, no roles, just two adults navigating complicated lives. Rumors faded as results spoke louder. The team thrived under his leadership. People felt heard. Productivity rose, but more importantly, so did morale. She watched it happen with a mixture of pride and humility, realizing that true leadership wasn't about control, it was about trust. One evening, as they walked out of the building together, she stopped and looked at him. "That morning," she said, voice steady, "when I asked you why you didn't take advantage of me. I was really asking if I could still believe in people." He met her gaze. "I think we both got our answer," he replied. The story didn't end with romance or dramatic confessions. It ended with something stronger. Months later, at a small office gathering, his son stood beside him, shy but smiling, as she knelt to his level and thanked him for sharing his dad with the company. The boy squeezed his father's hand and whispered, "She's nice." He smiled, knowing that the most important approval had been given. Sometimes, change doesn't come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from driving someone home, listening without judgment, and answering a hard question with honesty. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything, not just a career, not just a relationship, but the quiet belief that kindness still matters, even when no one is watching. Time moved forward, not loudly, but with intention. The kind of progress that doesn't announce itself yet leaves everything different in its wake. He settled into his role, no longer shrinking his presence, no longer apologizing for existing in two worlds at once, father and professional. The fear of losing one by nurturing the other slowly loosened its grip. He learned that showing up honestly invited others to do the same, and the office began to change in ways no policy ever could. One evening, long after the lights had dimmed and the building emptied, she found him still at his desk, reviewing reports with tired eyes. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she said softly. He looked up, surprised, not by the words, but by how deeply they landed. For years, he had been praised for resilience, admired for endurance, but never offered rest. He closed the file and exhaled, the sound heavy with everything he'd never said. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. She nodded, understanding more than she let on. "Neither did I," she replied. In that quiet space, something unspoken passed between them, not dependency, but recognition. At home, his son noticed the change first. The laughter came easier. Dinner conversation stretched longer. One night, as they built something crooked and proud out of mismatched blocks, the boy said, "You don't look sad as much anymore." The word stunned him. He realized how much his child had been watching all along, absorbing moods, carrying worries too big for small shoulders. He hugged him tightly, promising himself that success would never again mean absence. The past still knocked sometimes. Old doubts crept in during sleepless nights, whispering that good things didn't last, that kindness always came with a cost. But each morning, he chose differently. He chose trust over fear. Patience over bitterness. And slowly, those choices reshaped him. The company faced a crisis months later, one that threatened jobs, reputations, and everything they'd built. Panic spread quickly. Voices rose. Blame circled the room. When all eyes turned to him, waiting for direction, he felt the old instinct to retreat. Instead, he stood. He spoke calmly, clearly, reminding them that solutions came from listening, not shouting. He acknowledged mistakes without pointing fingers and outlined a path forward that protected people, not just profits. The room fell silent, not from shock, but from relief. She watched from the back, heart full, knowing this was the leader the company had been missing. After it was over, she stopped him in the hallway. "That was courage," she said. He shook his head gently. "No. It was care." She smiled, eyes shining, realizing that care was exactly what had saved her that night months ago, and what was now saving everyone else. Life didn't turn perfect. It turned real. Messy. Human. And somehow, that was better. Because one act of decency had grown into a legacy of trust, and one honest question had taught them both that the strongest thing a person can do is choose to be kind, even when no one expects it, even when nothing is promised in return.